Great. So here I am today with Lowell Johnson, who has a very extraordinary story about uh, a visit to the inner earth, to Telos, and uh, I'm just fascinated by what he has experienced. And so I came across you, Lowell, a year ago through the Gaia interview with Ruben Langdon. And yeah, and then found myself connecting with you and setting up this chat. And I mean, I have specifically an interest in the inner earth and also in dimensions of consciousness. So that is part of this kind of curiosity. But I think it's just really important for whoever watching this audience, whoever gets to see this, to have a coherent explanation of something that seems so otherworldly, that a fellow human being on this planet at this time has experienced, and what would I think for most be in the realm of fairy tales, is actually an experience, and but it is not just an experience that is of interest. It is also what it means for humanity and for the shift in consciousness that the planet is going through. And this is also what this is all about, and also why I wanted to have a chat with you today, because it's much bigger than me, and it's much bigger than all of us. It's global, and these are all parts of the tapestry of this shift and the incremental perception leaps that we as humans are having to make. So yeah, and so I'm just so glad that we're finally having this conversation, and yeah, welcome.
Thank you. That's a lot, really, to try and compress where this started with my experience in Telos, and I'll elaborate a little bit on that. But I was making some notes as you were kind of introducing. And synchronicities are just crazy. There's a friend I met a few years back. The very first time I ever presented publicly was here in Sedona in 2021 in March. And I met Cindy there. So when you were telling me that you had seen the interview I did with Ruben on Gaia, Cindy reaches out to me yesterday, and said that she was traveling back and she was spending some time in a room, and so she flipped on Gaia, and who was the featured program that came out first? Mine. She didn't even know it was there, and so she reported on watching it and went, "Oh my God, it's really there on Gaia." Yeah, it's been there for about a year now, and people will find it when they're meant to find it. But as extraordinary as that experience was, and you began to give it all the labels that I certainly did from a third dimensional perspective, this fairy tale idea of inner earth and having an experience to go there physically, it exactly sounds like a fairy tale. It did to me. It felt like it for a while after that. But then you went on to talk about how we touched upon consciousness and how that event, there was something bigger than that, and you couldn't be more right. And when it first happened, and I certainly didn't see it coming, I didn't ask for it. It came along when it was supposed to. I thought that was the story I'd tell for the rest of my days. And I was looking forward to, nurturing my relationship with the Lemurians and any other inner earth, entity, sentient being that, came along my path. I would learn shortly after that, is almost annually after that, some significant multidimensional event has happened that wasn't like going to Telos, and yet they're still happening.
Mm.
Well, I have a comprehension of what's going on. I've received countless downloads from sources that are sending us all downloads. I'm just open and paying attention to them now. That's the space that I'm holding till the rest of you either wake up or you don't. But as you pointed out, Earth's time in this density is done. We aren't just working through ascension, we're nearly completed with it. And that's why we all sense this energetic thing that for the uninitiated, there's something there, but I can't put my finger on whatever it is. Until you get into alignment with the vibrational nature of yourself and everything around you, you're still going to be in that something's going on, but I don't know what it is. More people are coming aware of this. And I was certainly one of them. I had the same 3D life the rest of you had. I was a hospitality executive for longer than I care to admit, had an IT business in the middle of all that. So, I did everything in this 3D experiment like everybody else did until I was called to Shasta. It wasn't on my radar. I'd certainly heard of it. And as much as I like to be outside, you would have thought that I would have sought this out before. The opportunity just hadn't presented itself. And as I said, when I went, it was during COVID. So if you want to, thread in some parallels on why these things happen when they happen, be my guest. It wasn't my first choice. When things were relaxed and we, had the ability to get outside and travel, I was going to head to national parks in the southwestern part of the United States. And when it didn't seem as though maybe those places weren't even open, that's when Shasta was put into my field immediately after that. And I've just followed those impulses ever since. So since then, I've actually, yes, physically visited Telos and communed with the Lemurians. I've had light beings introduced to me the year after that. And then I've had integration things that happened the summer after that have just broadened it all. And because of what's happened, many other people who are having similar circumstances happening to them now, real experiencers having real contact, they just kind of showing up. And I believe it's because we're that close to Earth's consciousness rising. And when hers does, the opportunity for every other sentient being to make that choice presents itself as well. So right now, those of us that are sharing these experiences are meant for people to understand the harmonics between you and the rest of the universe. Get in touch with your frequency. And, we've spent a lot of time over decades now talking about the healing process. Well, here's what I'm here to tell you. As of really the middle of February, we're done with that process. Those of us who are capable of healing ourselves, we're done. We've healed ourselves. We understand how our chakras function. We understand how to create our own alignment. And thus, we can really control our vibration. And there's an internal barometer inside of us that tells us when our vibration is low and when our vibration is high, and what the differences between them are. Once you have some awareness of your own space, now you see how that integrates with the things around you. When we begin to sense this change that's going on around us and in the earth, we want our vibration to match. We know it has to rise. So the healing part, we're done healing. Now we're on to transformation. We know we carry light, and we know now what we're supposed to do with it. If we're a light worker at all, we know it's our job to plant light everywhere we go and assist in that process.
Beautiful.
That's what I'm here to do.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, dude, that's 4 years of information in like 4 minutes. We can dissect all that, and there
Of
are
course.
pieces of it that I had to understand myself fundamentally. I'm a Capricorn, so due diligence and research, that's my nature. And to tell you that I've done it to understand this multidimensional world that we live in and we all experience, it's just a matter of whether you're paying attention or not. I invite you to open your eyes and see what's out here because one, it's magnificent. Two, we're moving into the space where this idea that we're all connected to one another and that the law of one prevails. This is the next dimension we're stepping into. And many of us have been straddling these dimensions for a while now. I step into the next dimension and beyond that so that I can come back and intelligently speak about what I've experienced there. But something happened in the last several weeks where what I've been able to experience in other realms when I'm out in nature and it's quiet and peaceful and serene and I'm connected at that level, and then what you actually get to see and experience in higher realms, that's happening in denser areas. And the first few times it happened, it freaked me out a little bit because historically, the vibration has got to be right in this area for me to experience those things beyond it. There can't be any third dimensional white noise going on. It's just a distraction. Well, the distractions are still there. I'm hearing them in places I'm staying, and this isn't typical. It should tell you that's how thin the veil is becoming, because even in these denser areas, that kind of light information is getting through. And those of us that have the ability to reach into, higher realms of our own aspects and the next dimension that's all around us that we see when we're in alignment, that stuff's happening in denser areas.
I would concur based on my own experiences. And I wanna circle back because in terms of like you said that each year has been like a new level of kind of multi-dimensional awareness and awakening. It does seem that that is part of the process, let's say, of ascension, that we go through these kind of initiation cycles and activations. Now, I have my own stories to tell, which are, seem like fairy tales, and will obviously speak to those who have the ears to hear them, and that will also then it becomes an activation for them. So what I experienced when first listening to your interview about your journey to Telos, that for me was a consciousness activation. And so it's like I get the sense that when we tell these stories, we expand the boundaries of what is seen as the possible, and our perception can kind of integrate as the possible, and this becomes this consciousness activation where we access other realms, we activate our multi-sensory abilities in new ways. And so that happened for me in hearing your interview. And that's also why I want to touch on the specifics also of what happened. Because
we will.
I would like that activation, not again for me personally, but for anyone who comes in and watches this, because you have such a coherence about you. There's nothing kind of fluffy woo-woo out there, crazy about you as a personality, let's say, like as a human being, right? So, and I feel is also part of the activation, because you are so kind of grounded and you know, developed in a worldly way as a personality, as a human, that you have this experience that is just so next level, that bridges something. It creates some kind of binding. It's the best way I can describe it. That is for the benefit of all.
I love to hear you say that. I came to that conclusion that I serve as a connector, I serve as an activator. And so when you finally articulated what I came to understand, it's why I'm here. It's why, I understand I've ascended. I can speak intelligently about the things on the other side and come back and report them. But I'm just like the rest of you. I came up in a 3D world. So, it's interesting you say that. A few years back, when, I could look at the situation I was going through objectively, look at it as an observer and see how you would react, Lowell. And I kept concluding that if a guy like Lowell was having these experiences and explaining them that way, would he be believable? And the answer to me was, hell yeah, this guy sounds authentic. As time went on, I began to understand my connection with higher aspects, because I was starting to expound some profound things that certainly didn't come within my little Akashic records. And yet here it came anyway. So my juice comes when I know that something I produced, something I said, triggered somebody else, and that was the purpose for putting these things out there for people to be able to see. Because I'm no different physically than any other human on the planet, it means that we're capable of achieving these same things ourselves. And the time for that is now. There is so much other help around us that if you have no other means by understanding it, let's call them angels. We understand what higher help is from other dimensions. They're here to assist us right now. I can see us. There's a whole rabbit hole to go down here now to put all this information together, because we're so fascinated with looking up at the sky and the disclosure around what we believe is UFOs. And that's the narrative. Until I had my experience in Shasta with the Lemurians, it was mine as well. We thought it was something beyond ourselves. We thought it was off the planet. We gave no consideration to civilizations that are here in other dimensions and have been for a long time. I needed to be opened up to that first. Now, there were a lot of other people that certainly knew about Lemurians and the Atlanteans and, our entire global history before that. There was a lot of things that I needed to understand so that I was in a position to be able to help others understand it as well. And as I pointed out before, I'm a Capricorn and my due diligence is second to none. If it doesn't resonate with me in the end, I will say so. But I will also share things that none of the rest of you have been able to experience yet. And it's likely you won't. After I had my experience and, word got out, people asked me if I would be willing to, take them on hikes up to the area that I was at. And at first, I didn't want to do it. And here's the reason why. I had this idea that if they didn't have the same experience I had, that there was going to be a level of disappointment that they had, and I didn't want to deal with that. Well, my guides, straightened me out quickly and said it wasn't up to me to provide the experience. It was up to me to take them to the place where they could have their own because all of us are on individual, unique journeys, learning individual, unique lessons. And we should all be allowing each one of us, these sovereign people that we know, to explore that. Because when they find their way to the tribe, we understand what unique gift they contribute to it that none of the rest of us have. And it's not like they're here to teach us what they know. Sometimes there are things that they will teach us, but we don't need to learn what Jody can do because we have Jody. When it comes time for him to execute the things that he is gifted with, like none of the rest of us, he'll do it because it's his nature. To him, it's the simplest thing he's ever done. To the rest of us, we freaking marvel at it because we don't do that. This is the strength of the tribe. And humanity was built to be unique souls riding around in these carbon avatars. We weren't meant to be models of one another. And so here we are. So I'll let you respond and then I'll go back and we'll talk about Telos because that's a really good place to begin.
Yeah, again, thanks for reflecting all that back and sharing. And I am, you know, marginally exaggerating my words for effect, right? You know, I was in my last little share because of the contrasts that I feel can help us kind of compute everything together. So ordinary guy has extraordinary experience, basically, you know, newsflash. And you could too, like this is available for everyone, right? So what was coming through when you were sharing then was, and I'm not saying you're an ordinary guy, I mean that's the other side of it, right? We're all absolutely these incredible, unique, phenomenal beings, right, that masquerade in some way or another with being just a simple person on the planet doing their simple thing in life. So I just wanted to say that. But when you were sharing and I was like, yeah, this is it, because it's like what's happening in my mind when I hear or come across extraordinary stories, metaphysical encounters, whatever it is. And this has been going my whole life because I've been reading about this stuff since I was 11, 12. The question is it true? Is it true? That's what's going on at some level in the back of my mind. Is this true? And then, okay, if it is true, then what does it mean? And what does it mean for me? Right? What does it mean for me? Like, does that mean I need to do things differently or behave or think or feel differently with this new information? And you know, more often than not, it does have a level of consequence, because if this is true, then that means, right, X, Y, Z. If A equals, you know, A plus B equals C, then therefore, if C is around, then that means that, you know, D is coming or whatever, right? And
yeah, very three-dimensional thinking.
yeah, but it's so now there will be people listening to this. There will be people listening to you in other situations and encounters and recordings and everything else, in the physical or virtually or whatever, who will be asking the same question. Is this true? Is this true? Is this true? And then, well, if it is true, then that means a certain amount of extra things then need to be taken into account. And therefore, you know, the question, I think what a lot of people come to, well, then what am I doing in my life now? Is this even relevant to this new information? Or does it mean that I actually need to let go and stop doing a whole load of stuff and being a whole load of stuff that I was doing based on other ideas that came before this, which are paling in significance to this new level of reality, this new truth that, oh, like there's this huge amount of possibility where I can go into these other dimensions, that I can be activated, that I can align, that I can go to places and go through portals. Like, surely that's much more exciting than going to work at the supermarket every day. And I just literally popped out to the supermarket before this call. And it was, yeah, kind of like this humdrum sort of, yeah, bought some logs for the fire and a coffee. And it was just, yeah, like just this normal, ordinary kind of situation. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't really thinking about the contrast to this call, but now when I'm having this call, I'm thinking, wow, what a contrast going to the supermarket was. And bizarrely enough, that supermarket is part of a chain, a brand, a huge brand in the UK, that I went to school with the person who is now the kind of, I don't know what to call it, but like the major shareholder of that whole thing. It's his name and his, right. It's his. So it's, and it's like, that's so crazy as well, because in my particular live stream, I've had these experiences where, yeah, I'm going to this ordinary place, but actually that wouldn't exist if my friend who I went to school with, who was in my class, who actually came to Jersey on holiday with me when we were like 15, and we got blindingly drunk and went out and, chased women and stuff.
It's
kind
what we
of,
do.
and yeah, and I would, yeah. So that's kind of also there in the ethers of this whole kind of what's going on. That there is influence as well. There is influence. Like, we have influence, and so
It's interesting you say that. To me, I don't think my presence triggered this in your particular instance. But when you hear stories like mine, it tends to make you be a little more introspective, and you become an observer of yourself. So you have this frame of reference. I can compare all this new unusual things to who I used to be. You said a sentence that gets to the heart of all of it. After I started speaking at a few conferences and I saw what the community was like and who some of these other presenters were, I kept asking myself about the people sitting in the audience, listening to this speaker, what's in it for me? If you can't see some purpose for spending your time there listening to this person, then my guides are asking, you got your own life to live instead of sitting around listening to people's stories. Now, I say that especially in this regard. Right now, our focus is on light and transmuting negative energy into light. And we also understand that our thoughts become things. So the things we focus our intent on are the things that we should expect the universe is going to send back to us in abundance. So when we listen to stories about abductees and secret space programs, you tell me what your vibration's like after listening to that individual. Is it high or is it low? Because there's your barometer on what listening to this makes you feel. Now, I'm not saying that it's not important to understand that that took place. But if you go back and listen to the speaker another time, why? Why? I don't understand it. When right now you need to be focusing on the light component that is coming our way and the upgrades that you've been receiving. This is about where our consciousness is going. And we're not going to focus on achieving that while you're listening to somebody else tell stories about how they were abducted by aliens. That causes a whole nother situation where I promise everyone that's listening to this that greater contact between us and the Lemurians, at least in Inner Earth, was confirmed with me last year. Not just me, greater contact with those of you that are ready. It's going to happen. And then I had a friend, Dave Wallace, who came along a couple of years ago and introduced Beyond Earth Sentience and that component. And I'm telling you, this contact's already taking place. Would you like me to share, documented information I have about these instances? Because I've been accumulating it. The point is, it is happening. And for those people that are in alignment, they're just waiting for you to ask. the negative influences that certainly plagued humanity on the planet were here for longer than they should have been. And what I sense is that back during the harmonic convergence in, I think it was 87, there was a palpable raise in energy level. To me, what happened is that that frequency and those vibrations that were now locked out because Earth's vibration rose, that dark entity was in that band and they can't reach this place anymore. So we're done with ideas of grays and reptilians. And, I don't even want to broach those kind of, that element is gone from the surface. Now, I say that understanding that the residue that they left behind is evident all around us. Of course, it's still here and fading away over time. But watch all these veils that are being pulled back. Now we see the truth behind everything that's been going on here and what we have and haven't been told. People like me are now doing their homework so that we can speak more intelligently about our real history, and that we should embrace the idea of reincarnation because we've had many lives here. Many of you souls have been here through this Earth experiment through many incarnations and helping with the evolution. You should know that all those efforts are about to pay off. And the new Earth that we've been putting all this effort into is, the next solar influence away.
Very well said. Beautifully put, Lowell. So now what I wanted to touch on is this. Okay, so there's the consciousness activation of the extraordinary multidimensional experiences, and we've both had them, right? And we are going to hopefully talk about Telos and about your actual
we will circle back to that as soon as you make your point, because I promised I would do so.
The point, is that I've kind of lost it suddenly. It's like, ooh, where did you go? So the heart really, the heart of the matter really is this, living from this place, right? This the heart being the bridge, and this
yes,
kind of Christ consciousness as well, which is understanding everything in a much more expanded level and from the place of love and service and gratitude and forgiveness and everything else, and that be the leading light that humanity marches forward with into this new timeline of this new Earth. So that somehow needed to be shared right then, and that is this true thing, because it's going to come up again and again, and it does, right? Is this true? Is it true? Because if it is true, then now, so when I heard your interview, when I watched your interview about Telos, it's what I understand now as well is that I already knew that, but I remembered it through that story. I remembered what I already know. And I feel a lot of this is this remembering. So we, through stories, through codes, through activations, we remember, right? We start to remember who we really are and why we're really here, and everything else gets to come online. And so that's also what's so wonderful about these stories, because everything is based on stories anyway. Like culture is stories, and stories are our culture as well. And it's like I had that realization recently that there's a book, there's a a book that's been doing the rounds that's kind of quite big about like story being the best way to get a message across, or for marketing, PR, for everything else, for sales and all that kind of stuff, and for personal brand and all that, because story is so central to who we are as humans and everything. But and I realized it's like it's so much bigger than that, just about like, oh look, you can use stories to bring your message across. It's because we don't really have anything else.
No, that's right.
There is, it's like it's all stories, and we love stories. It's like it's all stories. The story of your journey into Telos is a story. My
Yes.
story, my awakening process, it's a story. All the
Yes.
inspiring legends and histories, and there's all stories, So
Well, let me just I'm going to interject a
yeah,
bit
please,
different
please.
perspective. I want you to replace that word that you've been using with experience.
Yeah.
These are experiences, and you were right on the nail when you talked about how oh God, there went my thought. It'll come back in a moment. Well, I can't roll back the tape to hear what you said, but when you said it, it resonated so much with me that you get the essence of understanding all of this. It just people have to be open to things beyond their human experiences. That this is what you said. That it was like you were remembering something. That's exactly right. You said it. I didn't have to say it and put it into your field. We're not learning new things, Jody. We're recovering information that's been stored in our Akash for lifetimes. And every time we reincarnate, it's not that that information goes anywhere. It's just been put in kind of a little vault.
Mm.
Then when it's time, you'll have access to all of the information in that vault again. And through our incarnations, when you see younger generations now, in my opinion, many of those people didn't come as handcuffed metaphysically as those of us that are older. I mean, when we came into this incarnation, they wiped the slate clean and we had to remember who we were. That was a tougher journey than it seems some of these gifted kids who are here to show us things to remember. You couldn't have been more on the mark when you said we're recalling things, we're remembering things we already knew.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one.
So should we get to Telos?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I'll try and tell a bit of an abbreviated story because there's a lot of lead up to help you understand why and how I got to Shasta. But we're going to leave that behind and we'll talk about what really happened there that day.
Yeah. So you went up to Shasta. You were like, oh, I'm going to go and meditate, right?
I was seeking, in the end, I'd certainly heard stories and I was familiar with who Saint Germain was and who oh Guy Ballard was. Guy, he and his wife back in the 1930s had an encounter in the woods and ran across this gentleman
Hmm.
who shared some wisdom this first day and then over a period of time came back and repeated it. Well, the gentleman in question was Saint Germain and was giving Guy Ballard enough information to assist humanity that would result in, I don't know, 12 or 14 books that he produced under the Saint Germain Foundation. There is still an organization in Shasta that represents that body, but it's kind of faded away over time. When it first happened, man, it grew into millions of people in a short amount of time because it resonated with so many people. The idea of the Lemurians and this place in Mount Shasta, which definitely has some kind of palpable energy that you cannot deny. Um, I was seeking an ascended master. I'm going to go out on the mountain, and I don't like to follow the trails everyone else follows. I know that I was looking, and it was interesting in retrospect. I was looking for energetic places, Jody. I wasn't looking for beings necessarily. I could feel these elevated energy areas, and
Mm.
they just made me feel differently, like elevated, like I'm connected to this. That's what I was seeking out. And along the way, I would stop out in the middle of nowhere and just say, here I am. If there's an ascended master here and there's information for me to connect to source, I'm here, wide open, show yourself. I never thought that the mountain was going to open itself up. So
Mm.
I'll dispense with the weekend and what led up to that. But
And just to
Sunday morning,
contextualize, that this Mount Shasta is a mountain, and it's is it Northern California? Is that right? Yeah, in the
that's
United States.
correct. Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
And it's a kind of a
Oh,
mountain that stands on its own, or is it
oh
in a
yes.
yeah.
It's 14,000 plus feet tall to the peak. And, it's part of, is it the Sierras or the Cascades? I can never understand because at some point they, meet. Um, it's just been sacred information there for a long time. And people have been drawn to the area long before me. But now that I've been there and I've heard others' tales about how they got there, the draw there is unspeakable. I don't know how. Whatever draws people there, I was certainly one of those victims, if you want to see it that way. I was drawn there for reasons I didn't understand. And once I got there, I would find out. I went with the idea that I was going to be there for a week and maybe two. And in the end, Jody, I left 5 weeks later because I had to be back in Santa Rosa for something I couldn't put off any longer. I didn't want to leave. And I was rarely hiking in the same place every day. There is so much energetic stuff around there. And if you like water and waterfalls, there is voluminous opportunities for you to interact with those types of things there. If you like to interact with elementals, that opportunity is there for you. Fairies want to see them, you will. Doors to Telos, you'll see them. These things, once you open up your awareness to this multidimensional realm that we occupy, you'll see it. Raise your vibration, I promise. It's all waiting for you to discover, because the time is right for that. We're about to get into a space where that vibration is the norm. And in order for you to exist in that realm, your vibration's got to match that, or at least be higher. This stuff in this density is about to entropy. That's why all these areas that people are being drawn to, these energetic areas, Shasta's one, Sedona's one, Glastonbury's one, Romania, Egypt, Australia, there are countless places that people have been drawn to and they didn't understand the reason why. Well, these areas are already predisposed to this higher vibration. Some of you went there to assist on the clearing process to help raise the vibration, and the rest of you just went there because you know why. It just felt like I was supposed to be there. All of this that we are conscious and unconscious of is taking place at almost a cellular level. We are being upgraded, by the way. This carbon vessel is being upgraded because the type of light that is now coming from the photon energy from our central sun is full spectrum light. We in the earth have been living on, let's say, they call it half orotronic light. We've sustained ourselves with that amount of sun and photon energy coming. But what's coming is highly more elevated than that. And we didn't have the capacity to interpret that. So what we've been receiving, those of us that have been getting, light codes, it's an upgrade for us to hold more light and higher frequencies so that this stuff that's coming at us, we understand how to interpret it.
Mm.
So back to Telos. This particular day, I went with the intention. A few days earlier, I'd sat in this spot. It's at the top of, as far as you can drive up, it's at the end of what's called the Everett Memorial Highway. When you drive out of town, you can follow this up and drive almost to 8,000 feet. And from there, you can, hike a number of trails. When I had been there before, I spotted an area that it was definitely off trail. But when I saw it at noon a few days earlier, the shadows were cast, and so it almost looked like cave openings. So I thought, well, it's not that far from here. What would it take? 30 or 40 minutes to get to it. And I just wanted to go explore it, thinking that I might find some kind of cave opening. So that Sunday when I went, I had noticed some energetic places on the hike up to the area that I would end up sitting in for a while. And at each one, I wanted to stop and kind of take the energy in and exchange it. And then I'd see one a little bit higher and a little bit bigger. So I'd move to that one. And then eventually I saw one that was against the mountain. Now, Mount Shasta is directly in front of me. And where I actually am, this is her sister, Shastina, off to her left from where I was on the south end. And when I climbed up to the spot, there were 3 boulders that came out and almost formed this cool little place where you could like sit in here. So the boulder on this side was narrow and a little bit higher than my inseam, so I could crawl up and over it. And when I did, I looked back in the distance off into the parking lot, and there's nobody around me at all. I can see off in the distance where I came from. And so I planted my light like every light worker, and then I sat down. Well, there's no way anybody is definitely going to see me now. And so I leaned up against the mountain, and the only thing between me is some, dried brush. I'm listening to music on my earpods. I had some water and I had some grapes. And once I finished my refreshments, I had put that away and the music stopped. I couldn't understand why. My phone was fully charged when I left the vehicle not that long ago. And so I sat up because I always carried in my back, left pocket. And when I pulled the phone around to look at it, there's no power. Well, while I'm trying to fire it up, I feel a breeze from behind me. And when I turned around to look, wherever I was leaning up, whatever solid surface is now gone. And there's an opening probably a foot taller than I am into the mountain. So I stand up and look down, and I can see a rise, and then it almost as though this goes downward. And as the light begins to adjust so that I can see into this capacity, this cavity, it looks like there's somebody down there, kind of on the left-hand side. And as soon as that thought came into my head, some voice said, would you like to see Telos? And you get a little jolt through you because none of this is what you expected. And of course I wanted to see that. So I started to make my way down, and what I thought was maybe an adult being, maybe about my size, and I'm 6 feet tall. This was not a 6 foot tall being when I got there. Alex, that's what he said I could call him, was over 8 feet tall. He was a Lemurian. So those of you that have this preconception about Lemurian, he looks like a pretty typical Lemurian, tall. He was dressed in like this white cloak, but he had these colored ribbons, and they were just so noticeable. I didn't know if that was representative of some rank that he held or whether that was just his idea of bling. I didn't know, but you couldn't ignore it. His complexion and his being was just freaking flawless. Now, it won't be until later that I'll put together that these are crystalline beings, and they would look flawless. They're not carbon bodied, and so they're not affected by the same wear and tear and maintenance that these bodies require. So the good news is that this is where we're going, gang. Anyway, and he said, "You can call me Alex." I said, "Well, that'll be easy to remember because that's my son's name." He said, "Yeah, we know about your son. Follow me." So as we're walking down this incline, I can see that there's a source of light coming from the other way. And when we get down closer to the bottom of wherever it is, I look back to see where we came from, and it's pitch dark. Whatever light might have been behind me, that's gone. It'll take me months later to figure out that that was a portal, and that's how you got in and out. And they affected that change somehow, but your vibration was such low that you were able to negotiate that. And that explains how you got here with your boots on the ground, because 4D, 5D, these are still physical environments. And this is where we're moving into next. So when we get to the bottom, this area opens up into what I would call, I call it a staging area because I don't know what else to call it. And across from us, there are 5 more of these, what I've now kind of come to understand, these are old lava tubes. And when I look to my left immediately, there's this platform. It's about 6 foot by 6 foot, and it appears to have like 2 bucket seats on the top. No console or anything else, just this. There's another one over there to the left. And if I look to the right, there's another one over there. Well, while I'm looking, taking all this in, Alex had made his way over to the seat on the opposite side and sat down and indicated for me to sit next to him. As soon as my butt hit that seat, this thing started to levitate, and off we went into the middle tube. What I noticed immediately, the 3D part of me is waiting for the sensation of like wind to go by me. There wasn't any of that. And yet we're still moving, I can tell. And as we get through this tube, I can start to see light coming from the other side. And as it does, this tube, you can see, is lined with crystals all over it. And every inch you move forward changed the light refraction. It was like you were in a freaking kaleidoscope. It was amazing and wonderful, and I didn't want it to stop until we got to the opening. And all of a sudden, now we're in level 1 of Telos. And Alex takes us up so that I have a view of the entire city like you've seen in photographs. You've seen cityscapes. So the orientation of the area is circular. In the middle of what I'm seeing is a huge white pyramid with a capstone. When I look to see where this ends up, you can't tell where the top of this thing is. I'm looking for a source of light because this place is lit like daylight, but there's no streams. It's not like there's a portal there where the sun comes in. It's not like that at all. And later you'll understand that, they program crystals to hold light, and they can activate them so that they can have a sickler, kind of day, if that's what you choose. They have the technology to be able to do that. Anyway, everything is crystalline. It's just beautiful. I noticed one particular round place over here that later will play a role in this visit. But as I'm looking through this, it's just fairy tale-ish. When I started to see this, thinking, how in the world are you ever going to explain this to somebody else? You just want the ability to be able to take your mind out like a VR helmet and here, put this on, Jody, and you can see what I saw. That's what I wished. So anyway, as we were going along, he was explaining things like the nature of the Lemurian council, who was on it, the nature of the king, queen, how they were governed, how many levels there were. And as we made our way through, he came down closer to the surface, and I could begin to see, pods of Lemurians here. There's a couple over there, and 3 over there. And as I went by, there were 5 or 6 that I could make eye contact with as we were going by. And when I did, Jody was like, they knew me and I knew them. I don't know how, but yeah, like I've been here before. And again, before this happened, my knowledge of Lemurians was limited to what I had heard about them when I was studying about the Atlanteans, because that's what triggered me first. And the only reference I knew about Telos before this day was seeing it on the cover of a book in town earlier. That's it. So anyhow, we make our way to the 3rd level, which is where their hydroponic gardens are. And to try and explain the technology that they use there with the minimal amount of soil that's required is incredible. And then when the idea that this all feeds the entire population here, that's a staggering amount of information to take in. And of course, my little Capricorn mind's going through, well, even if this perpetuated itself rapidly, which it does because of the way that things grow, there were a lot of other dots that had to connect for me to understand how this feeds this community. Take into consideration that when the story was originally told, we had this understanding that 25,000 of the Lemurians made it during the flood, that provisions had been made for up to 2 million, and there was space to accommodate them all. It just came on so quickly that that's all that made it. When I had first started to do my research 4 years ago, it had been suggested that the Lemurians, both on the surface and within, were numbering like 1.2 million. And then, was it early last summer? There was another channeling by a guy named Sam the Illusionist, who channels the Lemurians. And he puts the Lemurians on the surface and beneath at 4.7 million. Yeah, we're all busy. We're here to assist in the process. So when I was starting to do the math on how does this feed all of those, even if it was like 1 million people, how does it feed them? And that's when you have a better idea of where we're going and what they do. Those are light bodies. They eat because they enjoy eating, and their bodies use that energy in its entirety. No one has to worry about where the closest restroom is. That's not how they function. So they no longer have to eat that way to maintain their form like we do. These physical bodies require nourishment. They require maintenance. They eat because they like to eat. And, they've limited themselves to vegetarian diets, but it certainly lines up with what I understand. So once, all that kind of sunk in, we made our way back to the surface. And that building that I had talked about before, we made our way back over there. Now, when you saw this thing was rounded and was like a series of crystal panels that form this circular room. I'll learn that this is the council chambers. There are 13 seats around a round table in the middle of it, but the entryway is like an open double door environment. Now, there's no doors there. And it wasn't the opening itself, but what I noticed that was etched into these panels on each side. When I first got to Mount Shasta, it was too late to hike the first day I was there. And so I just walked down Main Street, looking at shops to see what was there, what I saw. There was one shop in particular called Blue Child Gallery. And its Japanese proprietor and artist, Haruko, had some really interesting cards and illustrations in the window, so it drew you in. Now, when I got in there, this was during COVID, so it was the first day I'd ever been to Shasta at all. And she had shoe covers that were there for you to use. Of course, I interpreted that because of COVID. I thought, cover your shoes and this was some exercise. I would later learn that she's Japanese, and this is just kind of the nature of their culture, that you remove your shoes and you can either walk around your socks or here you use these. I got that later. Anyway, when I saw that, I thought, well, there's some interesting things here. I'll come back another day and explore. And before I did, when I looked across the room and in front of me, she's got 10-foot ceilings in there, at least, maybe 12, because this illustration I'm looking at in front of me is 3 feet wide, 10 feet high, and there are many of them around the perimeter of this room. These are all light codes that she's illustrated by hand. And they are perfectly symmetrical on each side of this. She lays them out on the floor and they take months to do. And then she goes back and she colors them. Incredible. When I saw that code, there was something that just struck me in my core. I went, I need to come back here and see these. So 2 days later, I'll come back early morning when she first opened. So it's just me. And I'm walking around and there's really 3 places within the store. There's the first front that you see when you come in. It's pretty big space. Then there's kind of an area behind that in another room. And there's one more smaller room in the back that might be 10 by 10, maybe not even that big, 8 by 8, where she has 5 of these things posted up there. And when I went in there, I was just compelled to spend some time in front of those codes. So I went back out and I had already seen a little pillow that was in that room. And I said, do you mind if I sit back there for 10 minutes or so and meditate? Because that's what it's for. So she said, just close the door behind you and take whatever time. I didn't intend to be there for very long because I certainly didn't want to keep it to myself. But more than 20 minutes later, I came out of there and I was in tears. And it wasn't, there was no sadness associated with it. It was just whatever these codes were, man, I just took them in. I noticed the doorway as I went back out. And I noticed the codes on this side, which was the new earth. And I noticed this code right here, that was the new angelic blueprint. And those were the codes that were freaking etched in these crystal panels going into this room. When I saw them, I thought, I've seen these before. And I asked Alex, I said, these look familiar. He goes, oh yeah, those are Haruko's. Those codes are accurate, and that's why we inscribed them here. Well, now you move into the room and I'm taking in, the table is the only thing really wooden that I've seen in all of this. Most of the rest of it's crystal, and it's not that it isn't inlaid with crystals as well. But it's the environment in the room that's got my attention. And I can feel something like pressing into my heart core while I'm in this space. And it's just like the best hug you've ever had. It like continually compresses into your heart space. So I laughed to myself because I thought, well, this is where you have meetings. You just soften people up on the way into their meetings, and they're all pliable with whatever you want to achieve. So as I'm taking in this atmosphere, I can see 5 more people coming my way. I can tell that there are 4 females that are flanking a male in the middle. All of them are taller than I am, but the male in the middle is taller than that. And if I can believe the illustrations I've seen, that's a Dhamma. It turned out that yes, that is in fact who it is. So they invited me to take a seat at the table, and they sat 3 on either side of me. They began by introducing themselves and telling me a little bit about what role they play. It didn't take a lot of time. And to be quite honest, all of it was a blur. I could remember Alex. I can remember Adama. And I remembered the first woman who spoke, Shyama, because after this, she seemed to chair the meeting. It was her that was going to kind of, the exchanges were going to come from here. So I'm going to find out what I'm doing there. Well, she went on to begin to explain that they also sense that the shift is imminent. And they're preparing for when they can reintroduce themselves with the surface. They have technologies that they would love to share with us, but only when humanity's consciousness rises to the same level as theirs. There had been more visits to the surface that at first, think of it, in order for them to come into this density, they have to drop their vibration in order to experience third dimension, which is why they tend to stay out of here or find areas that vibrate at higher levels so that they can make those exchanges. But that's what has prevented them largely from being here on the surface. But as you've heard already and you've sensed, the veils are thinning, and that experience between us and higher dimensions is happening with us on this side already. So there's more opportunities for not just them, not just inner earth beings, but these beyond earth sentients that we've been talking about. They're also making a presence, and they're here doing their own little fam trips. Let's get back to Telos, because that's another rabbit hole that we can certainly go down. But anyway, once she explained that to me, like, I'm thrilled. This is July of 2020. And it had already computed through my mind that I had read many resources that talked about winter solstice in 2020 and something significant that was going to happen then in terms of the shift. Now, I was fully aware of all these cosmic cycles that had taken place and to seem to reset at zero in 2012. Got that. It took me to really understand that our entire solar system took until 2016 until it was really bathed in this cosmic photon band of information coming at us from the central sun. And science really assisted me in helping me understand. That was one of the first concepts I really got, was the cosmos and their effect on the rest of the universe. So when you see a little Earth over here, make sure that you understand we're part of this little solar system, which is part of this galactic galaxy, and our central sun feeds and nourishes all of it. Well, we've been through cosmic cycles, and that age of Aquarius, we passed into it in 2012, and we're going to occupy this band of higher photon energy for the next 2,000 years. This is why our consciousness is rising. Every sentient being, not just on Earth, but if there's other sentient life everywhere in the universe, is being affected by this rise in consciousness. And if we understand that every conscious being in the universe is on a path of evolution, why wouldn't we believe that Earth is too? She's done with her third density experiences. She's had all those lessons. She is almost elevated to fourth. You know that when these hyperdimensions overlap, that's when we can start to experience both. But very soon, she's through whatever membrane that she needs to negotiate to fully embody herself in this next dimension. And third dimensional vibrations have no space, they just aren't supported. This is why we are all talking about getting your chakras clear, getting yourself in alignment, in an attempt for you somehow, consciously or unconsciously, to value your vibration level and where the earth is going. So once I was thrilled with what they were saying, because it certainly mirrored what I believed was going to happen. Then I was to find out why it was me. It won't be until months later that somebody suggested, well, you know why they invited you in. I said, no, if you can enlighten me, I'd appreciate it, because you're one of them. You're a Lemurian, Lowell, or at least that was somewhere along your timeline. That hadn't occurred to me until then. But anyway, I will learn later that Shyama gave me three things that she addressed. She said, first of all, you've already demonstrated that you can hold fifth dimensional awareness. So you're aware of this perspective of things. Two, we know you're the protector of Gaia. Now, I don't know where they came up with that. That came from an ayahuasca journey 2 years prior that was put into my field from my ayahuasca and my interactions with Inner Earth. So that connected a dot 2 years before that I hadn't really paid attention to. And then the third was when, they explained that when Earth's consciousness rises to the level that they wish to commune with the surface, bring to us all the technologies that they have to offer, because humans aren't without merit. There's a certain amount of creativity, and they can manifest pretty much whatever they wish. They've lost the edge that us humans have in this third dimension thing, because really, what's our impulse? It's to make things better. And how do we do that? Well, we inject our emotions into the decisions that we make. They're beyond really that third dimensional thing that gives our emotions fire. That, looks at a situation and I want to change it. And oftentimes we hope you want to make it better. We can see that there's certainly different ends of the spectrum when it comes to that. But that's primarily why humans are so valuable. The entire galaxy is watching what humanity is capable of. And if we were to look back with any sense of remorse, maybe it's that we had been manipulated along the way. And humanity really had not had the opportunity to really demonstrate what they really could do if they were left to their own devices. So that's exactly what's coming now. That your DNA that's been tucked inside of you for a while, and you've been operating on 2 of the 12 strands, dude. Many of you are operating on more of that right now, whether you realize it or not. And that's why you get to experience the things you've experienced. But there's more. You're about to open that bandwidth up wide. And whoever prepared us for that? Who told us about this? We were told it was junk DNA. It is not junk. It's the stuff that holds all those things you referred to earlier as the things you're being reminded of. You are unlocking those things by triggers that come your way or some kind of influence, whether it was me talking about Lemurians and it got your attention and all of a sudden there's more to it than that. This is why people are crossing your path to do that now. So once they asked if I would be willing to be an emissary, looking back on it, that's exactly the purpose I've served. I came and incarnated back in the early 50s, like a lot of us Indigo children that came to respond to Earth's call. I came to be on this side of the incarnation so that I could assist when the time came. So when they asked me to be an emissary, I thought that was a new concept. I would have to sit with it for a while to understand really my role and who I am and what I'm doing here on Earth right now. It was to be here to do that very thing. Now, I say that like I'm not the only special one. I'm not the only former Lemurian walking on the planet. There are many of us that are awakening into this right now. So I'm not putting out there that I'm any more special than anybody else. I just have a greater awareness of what's happening than many people do. But again, I'm here in the same way that you reached out because it triggered something in you. That's happening on a more wide scale and much more accelerated pace, it seems to me. That I look at my journey and how quickly it adapted. And now I keep hearing people really within the same time frame who somehow had gone through their entire 3D world until this period, and then something else woke in them. And now all we can do is we just need to know more about whatever that is for whatever the reasons. And so here we are. Anyway, with that, when I agreed and said yes, it was really the only words I had uttered. I would be honored to do that, because at first it's, why me is the first thought in your head, and you don't say that out loud. I would be honored. And the meeting was over. Like, these people, we get shit done and we're out of here. They thanked me and left. And then Alex and I made our way back to that staging area. Now, I had 2 questions before I left. One, can I tell anybody about this? And he said, you can tell everybody. We want people to know that we're here, and we want them to take seriously that we exist and we're not the only ones. And secondly, I wanted to know if I was going to be able to return. And his answer was, yes, you'll be able to return before the shift. No real idea of when, but yes, the door will be open to you when the time comes. I have not physically gone back yet. I'm looking forward to it, but clearly other things have found their way into my field. And that had to do more with ultra-terrestrial and extraterrestrial influence. Since Dave Wallace kind of made his way to the tribe and explained the protocols on reaching out with them for the last several months, I see myself as kind of a bridge in between. And now it makes much more sense to everybody when we see what we think are these lenticular clouds over Shasta and other areas. Yeah, we know what they really are. That's a shroud for the information and the communication and the traffic that's going in and out of there. Some of it we see, some of it we don't, but it's taking place. So did we not think there was some connection between off-planet and inner Earth? Think again. Of course there is. So when I got the answer to my question, the next thing I knew, I was back sitting where I was before all of this happened. I somehow in the days made my way back to the car. And when I got closer to the parking lot, that's when I started to giggle at all the other people around me, thinking that you have no idea where I just came from. And it has just spawned into the next thing. It'll take me months to understand that that would be my first multidimensional experience, and certainly far from the last. When that happens to you in your third dimensional being the first time, you think that this story is the one you're always going to tell. Well, it's one of them, but it was the awakening that was going to lead to the ability for you to have other ones. I have a greater appreciation now for whatever higher influence is coming my way, and not just mine, all of us, that we're kind of spoon-fed in baby steps. We're going to show you a little bit to get used to that idea so we can show you what we really want to show you, which if we did right now, would be so overwhelming for you that we would defeat the purpose of helping you try to comprehend it. The downloads that I've heard from others as well as mine resonates that some of this came so that I had the capacity to understand what they were trying to communicate. So those downloads you first got just put you in a space where I can comprehend this vibration that they're sending. And now they can send light packages that I can actually make something out of. The interpreter had to be in place. And you don't have any sense of any of that until down the road when you look back and see how things unfold. Now you have a method to the process. And I always wanted to understand the process so that I could explain it to others. That part where you explain that this was meant for others, I fully embrace that. I never said and don't promote that I was going to be the only one and you'd all have to come to me for information. No, I'm here to pass the baton. And whatever light I interpreted, came my way, it's my job to hand the baton to you so that you can continue to do the work and help enlighten others. You don't have to keep coming back like I'm a well and drawing from it anymore. You'll get what you were supposed to get from me. And the tribe has now found one more member. Oh, we know to find one another if we need each other, but we know that there's other work to be done. And we're just feeding ourselves that light component that we know is coming, and now we know what to do with it. There's a lot of still negative energy that needs to be transmuted into light, and that's our job.
100%. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Wow, so beautifully put, all of this. Did the Telosians communicate with you verbally or telepathically?
Both. When I heard Alex's voice, because that certainly was what got my attention the first time, that had to be in kind of some physical form. He sounded, to me a little like Australian, British. There was that kind of flavor to his inflections, and so you make of it what you can in your little third dimensional mind, because you need to label it somehow so that I can understand it. Once we get past the idea that we have to freaking label everything and we just let things kind of work through us, wow, do things open up after that.
So you mentioned, I mean, that's, obviously I've heard your story before, so it's like a nice recap in my mind. But anyone else who's watching, listening to this right now is going to be like reeling with like, what? Yeah, so many questions, or right, and that's natural. And then the kind of question of, is this true, right? Is this really true? And how can I know it to be true? And so with that, I will say to those in that place, like, what do you know inside you? What do you know inside you? For me, it's a remembrance. It's an activation to remember. And it's, Lowell is the person, the emissary in this particular case, right? For this information to be activating your memory banks, your DNA, your Akash record, so that you can be more of who you are now in this place at this time. And then there are these, right, that we had a chat in the other call about the other places of the inner earth, and how that's also interacting with the surface. And Glastonbury is one of these places. So I recently spent some beautiful times there last year, summer into autumn, and it was an incredible activation for me. I mean, I was just like, what is going on? And so many magical synchronicities and downloads. And I started to write a book about the kind of inner Glastonbury of Avalon, what is known as Avalon. And then I somehow, through I think your channel or something, came across this information about the inner earth under Glastonbury, called Utklaha. And that opened doorways in my conscious. That was an activate. I was just like, oh, okay, I kind of get this whole thing much more now, right? Because just as Mount Shasta is like this energetic portal of vortices, and there's so much happening there, also Glastonbury, Avalon is also this place, and there's a inner earth component to it, as well as what we have experiences on the surface, and activations and fairies and so many different, right? I mean, I say it's definitely a place to pilgrimage to. And like these other places on the planet, power spots. And I'm going to Bali in May, and I'm going to lead a retreat there. And it's all because of this activation, this power spot, this potential, this potentiality, this light that wants to be experienced, seen, lived, remembered more. And it's an eternal curiosity and excitement for me to do that. So and of course it's all about, okay, what excites you, and what is your curiosity, and where do you want to go, every person, right? Like, what is the true dance for you, the true expression for you, your authentic nature? And I heard recently that it's actually a video that just came up on my feed, which was someone talking about how some group had done a study about some kind of frequencies or electromagnetic vibrations that emanate from the human, and that they found through this study that actually the frequency or the state or mood of authenticity was the highest frequency, beyond love. Now, I'm not saying it is or it isn't, just saying this is what I heard. And it's like, it's so interesting because authenticity, what is authenticity? Well, it's just like the totality of who you are, expressed unapologetically in all the spectrum of who you are. It's like the fully activated DNA 12-strand incarnation of who you are is truly the authentic you, right? It's
Yes.
beyond, it's all of the spectrum, all of the rays, all of the everything is the authentic expression of who you are. So it makes total sense. I'm like, oh my goodness, of course.
We, until whatever happened, we weren't able to tap into whatever that was. We had limited ourselves to whatever we had absorbed. Either we were conditioned by things in our lives, or we were taught whatever we knew. And so we only relied on what we thought we contained in our little brains. Well, we didn't understand the brain in itself is interpreter, and we receive that information through our third eye and the pineal gland. And that's what really connects us to wisdom that we've archived away in past incarnations, and we certainly have access to. But the nature of incarnations in this Earth experiment was you're going to wipe your memory banks clean, and keep in mind the lessons that you signed up for during this soul contract. You're going to knock them out along your journey. And oh, by the way, you're going to learn some good things and bad things. But that is what you came here to do, little human. Your soul chose to come here and help Source know more about itself. You're part of the evolution process. So those lessons that you chose, you have to learn the contrast between the good and the bad stuff. And you tuck that away in your Akash so that sooner or later, the collective benefits from all the things we've all gone through. So thank you, Jody, for the shitty things that you had to go through on my behalf. And you're welcome for the things I had to.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Mm. So I asked my mum before this interview conversation, I asked her, I'm going to speak to this guy who's gone down to Earth. Have you got any questions? She said, is it hot down there?
No. The idea of you have to throw physicality out when you start to conceive multidimensionality, because the fourth dimension is present around me right now. I'm living in it, whether I can feel it and sense it and understand it. That's up to my perception. But Earth is not the way with this, molten core in the middle of it. If I was to suggest that there are beings that live on the sun, our 3D minds would go, how can anything survive in that environment knowing it's a hot mass? Well, you have to embrace the idea of multidimensionality, and they have nothing to do with those physical things. We came to Earth to participate in this physicality. We'll return to light form when we hit the sixth dimension. And even then, when you're a light being, if you choose to, exchange in and out of form, you can. But the whole idea was for us to enjoy Earth in this environment of physicality. That was part of all of this. Whether it exists in other places in the universe, I can't speak to, but my gut tells me that there isn't anything like this. And part of, humanity evolving with Earth, this was part of this whole package. What I do know is you certainly have to give some idea to whether Earth is really going to be destroyed, because planets have gone that way before. And there was a planet in our own solar system that used to be between, I think it was Mars and Jupiter or Neptune.
Mm.
That originally, according to what I understand, was originally meant to be the life supporting place in our universe that'll also hold the Akashic records, like we're going to end up doing. And it was blown out of existence. Earth, yeah, plan B, we'll try it with Earth, which had been this interstellar, kind of byway for a long time. Once it looked like it was going to serve this purpose, then the mantle was formed and all the rest of it kind of came into form. But she was a seventh dimensional being to begin with, and Earth would support dimensions between 1 and 9. This is where we're at. So in her current configuration, she's moving out of the third dimension into the fourth. And actually, if you understand how they work, she's moving an entire octave. So if you think of an octave up to the 10 or 12, that she's at 3.8. Well, she's about to jump to 4.8. And that's why when we talk about moving into the fifth dimension, for all intents and purposes, we're so close that yes, your consciousness will be fifth dimensional, but Earth is still working her way through her own levels of consciousness. But once we get out of this freaking density, that rise is going to be rapid. So moving from 4 to 5 is going to happen quickly. See what other rabbit holes we can find our way down. We can do this all day. In answer to your mother, it's not about heat. I'll tell you what occurred to me is that after Telos and Inner Earth, they kind of equated in my mind at first that was what it was. I would be shown later through other books that would be brought to my attention and reminded that Lowell, Telos is not the only Inner Earth city. We're going to show you 9, including books that are out there that the collective and references have been made. But in the end, the Agartha network has over 120 of these cities in it. So when you open yourself up to that idea that I'm here to help people understand that more. Now, why? Why is it important for us to know that? I'll tell you why I think it is, because the last shift didn't come without catastrophic things on the surface. And we're about to go through that some more. You see evidence today of earthquakes, tsunamis that are created by it, flooding, wildfires. Look at things that are happening, wildly different temperature patterns, magnetic fields that are shifting. All of this is taking place right now. And if you're paying attention to these things, you'll know they're having an effect on the sentient life that's here on the planet. Pay attention to that, and you'll start to get some answers for where we're going. But we're not through with those catastrophes. Look, Atlantis sunk, Lemuria sunk, land masses have changed through these changes. We're not finished with that. What we do know are the areas that are predisposed, because those are safe zones in our mind. That's what I have a download of, and that came recently. I thought I understood some of the main areas. Now I have a much broader idea of how that affects the entire planet and how the grid, the electromagnetic grid works. Because there were 2 grids here originally. The Lemurians had designed a 7th dimensional grid, which was amazing. The 12 original crystal pyramids that were placed here strategically to set Earth up as this self-sustaining, energy source. The grid work, accumulated all that. When the Atlanteans came along and had their own agenda, they couldn't reach 7th dimensional awareness. Fifth dimensional is extraordinary, don't get me wrong, but they didn't understand that technology. So once the Lemurians kind of disappeared, They had to rebuild their own grid, a fifth dimensional grid. So that still exists. We're just now waiting for these pyramids. They're all coming back into alignment right now to set the planet up for its new stage of evolution. Everything's coming back into alignment. I mentioned the grids because I like to just plant that little seed. You're all little electromagnetic beings, whether you really see yourself as that or not. And once you do, then you can certainly understand how we're connected to everything else, everything, not just others. Sentient life, you can get in touch with it. It's why I have such an affinity for being out in nature, because I can connect to that, not people, that. That's there within all of us. So we'll see. All I can tell you is that in my mind, all of this is in preparation for this to happen. And I had a clear understanding that the shift was going to happen during my lifetime. I am not a spring chicken anymore. And the clock is ticking. I'll leave it there because for the uninitiated, I don't want to plant any seeds that they'll see as a hard and fast time. But I have an area in my mind that I think is more likely, especially given the solar conditions we've been watching happen. The fact that the North Pole is no longer where it used to be, and that the Earth has shifted on its axis more than once before. We're overdue for that to take place. Now, how do human beings see themselves surviving? You're about to raise yourself into a different level of vibration, and your being will be in concert with that. You'll find stasis with the earth and live in harmony like we did a long time ago, before we understood the differences of duality and what separated us. We still get to witness a bit that, but we don't focus on it. We get to see things from a higher perspective. And then again, that idea that we're connected to everybody else, you certainly don't want any harm to befall yourself.
For sure.
Yeah.
My sense, because obviously, yeah, when we talk about this sort of shifts on the surface, there's always that, oh, well, how can I, get to be in the right place for that? And my sense is that if you listen to within and you are loyal to that knowing, then you're going to be fine. Like, because you are either going to feel a strong need to go somewhere, or you are going to be guided somewhere, or you are going to be put somewhere.
I know that to be true, Jody. You said it really well.
Yeah. Like, that's all you need to know.
You just know. There's the things that come out of me. I know that there are other aspects that are flowing through me. But in the end, the answer to how do you know that? I just know. There's an authenticity that you referred to before. That's my barometer. If it feels authentic to me, then I have no reason to deny what my intuition's telling me. And when I pay attention to that, I seem to be connected to much more than just myself to rely on to interpret what is coming. There are extraordinary things coming. There are extraordinary things for us to experience right here now, once you get in tune with those frequencies. And we're all rising if we're paying attention to it. I'm speaking to the people that get it or are triggered by this. There is certainly more of the unawakened than the awakened. But I'm not here worried about changing the masses. In fact, I'm not here interested in changing anybody else's opinion. I know what I know, and I can't unexperience the things I've experienced. What I'll leave you with is that we're all capable of this. And if you're just open in the least amount of awareness, you'll start to realize things that are beyond your current capacity, and you can't deny them anymore. And here is where you'll start to see things placed in your path that are additional triggers or keys for you to unlock more of that stuff that you already knew. And once it does, and it comes back in your field, boy, it helped us put these things into perspective. And there are things about this third dimensional platform that I'm seeing beyond. That's wonderful. It tells me that you sense what's on the other side of the veil already, so you can speak intelligently about it too. Great. You already vibrate at levels. You have ascended. Now, we're not done. We're all in the process, but you have. Because if you hadn't, you couldn't speak about those things, and you wouldn't. You dismiss them and be stuck where you are, but you're not. And every time you get a chance to help kind of, and we are influencing to a way, but the way that we're going about it is organic. Somebody hears something you heard that was placed in your path and is undeniable to you, that was placed there for a purpose. There aren't any coincidences. You and I didn't meet by coincidence either.
Absolutely. Mm,
Well, I don't suspect this is the last time that you and I are going to communicate.
surely not. Surely not. Mm, mm, yeah. I'm just full of gratitude right now. Mm, appreciation for you and for this, and gratitude. Uh, yeah, it's an activation in itself. Just having this conversation again, it's just a pure activation. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Again, my juice comes when others are getting it. And there's a certain special, feeling that I get, especially when I'm watching them. You can see people. Um, the last consulting job I had, and I was doing work in the non-gaming side of casinos, that I would gingerly choose the people I could have these kinds of conversations with. And there were a few days when across the table, you saw it physically, like they got it. There was just
Mm,
a snap to their head, and like, oh my God, I know what he's talking about. Those are the moments that I live for, is just to see you get it so that you can continue your own journey. Not here to follow mine. You're not here to think that you're going to have the same experience as mine. I just opened up your ability to know that you can do this too. And that is why I'm here. If not, I would have gotten frustrated with humanity and their efforts and what's going on and all this white noise. And I'd ascended when I could, but that wasn't the deal I made. The deal I made was to be able to have some of these abilities restored to me so that I could use them to help others see their way there too. Not to guide them and show you a map, but to provide the kind of triggers like you got that just set yourself on your right path, your path. And I love to see whatever you're turning into, because that unique gift that you're going to contribute to the collective, I can't wait for you to figure out what it is in its entirety. Because we're all here to achieve a level of mastery in some particular field that no one else has. I get off
yeah.
my soapbox now.
No, it's great, because that's what I'm all about as well. And that's what I'm more every day stepping into, allowing, is holding this space for others to flourish and flower in their unique, sovereign, authentic soul expression on their path on this planet at the time, through owning their purpose and through living it fully and embodying it, and letting go of anything that's not in alignment with who they really are and why they're really here. So totally. I mean, this is what I'm just the last four and
I
a
just
half
got
years.
ethereal chills while you were describing that. Thank you. It's so true.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. So that's part of the space I'm loving and jazzed by and holding and expanding into all at the same time. And I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's this wonderful dance, right, of remembering.
Well,
And
I'm going to suggest something to you that Yedi Maya, she has a gift for interpreting light language. She, oh God, I just forgot what I was going to have. It'll come back if it was meant to come back. Damn it. See, when you get to this level, there are so many things that are going off in your mind that you have to pinpoint one of them to zero in on it. Even as we have these discussions, there is certainly a topic that we can choose and go down that rabbit hole for greater clarity. We never run out of rabbit holes. We're never done with this search. When we thought we got to the end and we got an answer in the conclusion, no, that only spawned two more things I need to understand more fully. Yes.
absolutely.
But yeah.
And the thing that also, one of the threads that I feel like has been had a light shone on it in this conversation has been about this remembering and about how what your curiosity is. And that, for me, that my curiosity started when I was 11. Like, it was like a light switched on. And by the way, that was 1987. That was the harmonic convergence. So
wow.
it was just like, suddenly I was like, right, tell me all about the unexplained, the mysteries of the universe, pyramids, UFOs, meditation. I wanted to know about it all. And I got to know, went to the library, got books and just devoured them. And it was a process of remembering, and those books helped me remember. And that, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? And if so, what does it mean? And this, or has been a constant kind of unfolding, spiraling outwards. And again, anyone who's coming across this information, right, listening to this, watching this right now, it's that same dynamic that is at play, where it's like there's an inner knowing which is aligning with the information that's coming through right now. And it's about opening to that inner knowing. And if there's something that doesn't resonate, well, just leave it, put it on the shelf, let it go. And embrace and love and warm to and expand into that which is resonating, and that which is on fire and lit up by this information, by this transmission, and allow that to expand. We give that space in, because that is what is going to feed you, fuel you, light you up more and more and more, and let go of the pain story, right? That's right, the suffering, because we're expanding into the light, right? The being lit up into the light, and expanding into the light again and again, more and more, remembering, and empowering more and more. And as we do that, then others get lit up as well. And that's like this kind of lighthouse, being a light beacon, light worker channel kind of does and is. So that's also, it feels like a thread throughout this conversation of that dynamic, tuning into that dynamic within us. Because we can go away from a conversation like this, from information like this, and be like, oh, like I've got bills to pay, or I've got or I've got this achy foot, or I can't walk properly, or whatever it is, and be brought down into the minutiae, into the details, and then kind of slowly forget over time, and then kind of question, what is that even real? Like, these crazy thoughts, and what is that? Who? What? Dimensions, and but it's like what resonates. Just allow that to expand within.
There's a place where your discernment finally kicks in, and we stop believing everything that we see, hear, experience, because not everything we hear is factual. And until something comes along and challenges that, We just go along. And now you see all these NPC characters wandering the planet, who that's their reference, their frame of reference. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they've just ingested some information that they labeled as true, and this is what they're going to pitch. Whether it is or not, they just stopped their internal quest to find out what was true. And they've been satisfied with that level of knowledge. Well, it certainly isn't wisdom, but that's their choice. They're sovereign beings like the rest of us, and they all exercise free will like the rest of us. So, where for a while, it had been introduced to me early in my journey that once the collective's vibration rose as a majority, that's when Earth would rise. It took me understanding that Earth's consciousness rising and our personal consciousness rising, those are two different things. Earth is set in a cosmic cycle. She's going whether we do or not, and it has absolutely nothing to do with our consciousness. Where that comes into play is if we're interested in experiencing new Earth when she reaches her new vibration, your vibration has to match that. That's what you should focus your attention on. She's gone. Whether you're going with her, totally in your hands. But that certainly, as you know, Jody, wasn't any information we were equipped with, and very few of us had environments around us suggesting multidimensionality, natural, things, Eastern philosophies as opposed to Western. When did any of that get introduced into our fields? It wasn't into mine until way into my life, and it didn't come in normal ways.
Oh, wow, what a conversation.
Thank you. There's always something in these for me too. So I appreciate when I get to exchange with somebody else that vibrates at the same level. Now we're clearly opening doors for one another. And, I'm here to kind of broaden my experiences so that you can kind of see through that lens. And then maybe apply some restrictions that you might have had on the fairy tale world that that was the only way we had to label it. I'm here to tell you, gang, those are your experiences, as are your dreams. If you have vivid dreams that you remember, I'm here to suggest that those are experiences that you're cataloging and you're recalling now. Just like we're remembering things, those experiences come back into our field for a purpose. We're still, our soul is busy during our sleeping hours when we're trying to uh, resuscitate this body. We're always active. And in fact, I was told that the things that I would get is when my mind is quiet, and that tends to be when it is. When we shut down everything else outside of ourselves and lay down to sleep, that's when we've finally tuned out all the white noise around us so we can focus on what's trying to get through to us. Good meditators, those are the ones that have figured out a way to achieve that in waking moments as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and meditation is one way that I always, kind of circle back to for as advice, from my own practice. Like, just more I meditate, the more everything just flows in alignment. Doesn't mean we have to go off and spend a month in a cave or anything like that. It's like, but that daily practice of taking well, a minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour even, which I don't. I take about 20 minutes roughly a day. But it's enough for me because it's enough of just a phase lock with the highest frequency. And very much to encourage others to find their meditation and bring that into that some kind of daily routine. So it's just like phase locking in the highest frequency, phase locking in again and again, opening, yeah. But that you can also be someone who doesn't meditate, and of course be totally aligned. It's like it's all perception. It's all, yeah. Your choice. You are the master of your reality.
Yes.
Whether you realize it or not.
Get a hold of your vibratory level, however you get there. And then you can sense the rest of the world around you. I know for me, meditation was a key. It unlocked all of the rest of this. When I could quiet my mind enough that I could reach that field of probabilities and start to insert my intents in there. Now, looking back at it, this is exactly how I manifested where I am and what's been shown to me, because I was able to quiet my mind. And when you started to talk about the length of time that you do it now, I believe that as we do this more regularly, that the first 20 minutes of my day every day when I wake up is meditation, and that's how it starts. Once you do that regularly, it just becomes part of who you are. And so that meditative state just carries you, no matter whatever 3D things are going on around you. You found your little aura bubble. You know where it is, and you travel around in this fully aware of what that is. But it took you some time to focus on it, to realize what it took for me to get there in the first place, and how do I achieve that ongoing after that. It had to be a practice, and something that you continue to practice. It's just the same word. The more you do it, the easier it gets, and you just find yourself in this stage where everything's at peace. The one physical thing that stood out dramatically to me is that throughout my life, I've had a history of high blood pressure. And when meditation kicked in, I want to say shortly after, maybe 30 days after my initial orientation was over, it was gone. And I've never suffered from it since. That's been now since like late 2015 was the last time I've seen a doctor or needed any type of medical attention. The universe just kind of created a craving in me for the things that I feed myself. And 35 pounds went elsewhere. And it certainly wasn't my intent to join a health club or diet in any way. The universe, just when I allowed it to just maintain my body the way it was meant to, it did. And that has a mindful effect on your physicality that I didn't associate with it. I was one, I thought if you get your body fit, your mind will follow. It was actually the inverse. When my mind was connected to things beyond myself, my body followed. So when I get to these energetic places like Shasta, that's when these physicalities that are so profound, they stick out like a sore thumb. I can sense those energies now, and they heighten that. So like a guy my age should have some joint issues because I was a hockey player all my life. You just wear things out. I don't feel like that at all. I feel like when I was at my peak skating, and I was probably late teens, early 20s, when I was really at my physical peak playing hockey, that's what my joints feel like now. You figure it out.
Yeah.
Yes. It's all connected. I think once we get back in touch with the metaphysical side of ourselves that we've ignored for so long, lots of other parts of ourself respond.
Absolutely. And that's also this path of self-mastery, which is realizing, yeah, we have a choice in every moment to connect with that, to align with that, to allow that, and then miracles become reality. It's like the frequency of
Yes.
miracles is this point of power in the present and opening and allowing that we can choose in any moment. Mm, yeah. So yeah, well, Lowell, such a pleasure, honestly, such a
I
pleasure.
loved it, Jody. Thank you for inviting me, really.
You're so welcome. Thank you for showing up and heeding the call. Yeah.
It's what we're here to do. So, as I said, now that we know where we found one another, this won't be the last time we'll communicate. And there is something to Glastonbury's calling. So
Mhm.
as time goes on, we're going to compare notes and see if we can connect there.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, great, great plan. Mm, okay, well, thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful day.
You
And
too.
if anyone wants to connect with you, how would they do that?
The easiest way is you can find my website. And although the web address is a little cryptic, if you just type lowelljohnson.info, you'll find your way right to my website.
Right,
Easiest way.
great. And that's
And
LO
you can reach
double,
out and connect with me through any of my venues there.
right. And that's LOWELL and then JOHNSON.info, right? Yeah, great.
Correct. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, good. Yeah, of course. Any help that way. All righties. Well, thanks so much and blessings.
Namaste, buddy. Thank you. Have a good day.